And so Harris is the chairman of that organization. He gives a lot of time and helps raise a lot of money for that organization. So in addition to the great work that he does at McCann, I also want to recognize him for the great work he does for Ronald McDonald House and for the city of New York. Harris.
I have to tell you that Terry screwed it all up, because first he starts by saying it's been a great conference up to now. And he asks everybody, how's it been going? And everybody says it's been terrific. And he says, just a few more hours, we got to make it. So just what the speaker wanted to hear. And then, instead of my being able to talk about Terry, he then talks about what we do, his wife and I, when we have co-chaired the Ronald McDonald House. And everything he said about me should actually be said even more about Tina, my co-chair for many years. Which basically means Tina's going to get each of you to buy a ticket, even students tonight, so for the gala in New York, because we could use it and those kids could use help. But demystifying the truth about commerce is what Terry asked us to speak about today. And I'm here with my partner, Suzanne Powers, our Chief Strategic Officer of McCann Worldgroup, and as Terry said, we have been named the most effective agency in the world, and a large part of that has to do with what Suzanne does, and she's going to explain that in a couple of minutes, because she's really the reason to be here today. You've heard from a lot of people talking about why retail is still strong, why retail should be strong, why retail should be perceived in the bricks and mortars business as a business that's solid. I had a whole speech prepared about it. I was going to tell you that while bricks and mortar grew 3.8%, the reality is digital grew 14.6%, but when you look at the dollars are far dwarfed. Digital grows based on a $60 billion type of level. Retail grows on hundreds of billions of dollars type of level. So by definition, e-commerce is going to grow faster, but that's not what's really important today. What's important today from our perspective, and we're going to be a little different than what everybody else has talked about, is why is it different? Why are the growth rates different? What does it mean for retail? And how you should think about retail from the human experience. You read these headlines and you fundamentally think that it's the end of the world as we know it because people are no longer walking into stores. And then you cross the street and you see people staring in windows. You talk to people and you see them basically still saying, I want to feel the product. People talk about the importance still of the joy of shopping in many cases. And the reality is those are all human experiences. It doesn't mean that e-commerce is not going to be part and parcel of every one of your lives as you begin to build your careers out there. But it does mean that the world should be viewed differently when we think about how we market to people and how basically people who have products have to address issues. When we talk about digital in today's world, if you're McCann, our 20,000 people around the world, we talk about digital offering us a screen. Everybody had a different view today about what digital means. To me, what digital means is a screen by which I can show wares. When I think about a store, and we heard Gensler earlier today, or Chase, who's actually in the room today, when they talk about it, they're talking about the store being a stage. They're both an opportunity to tell a story. And when you are talking to customers out there, the reality is you're telling a story. That's how we look at the world. McCann was founded over 100 years ago on a premise of truth. But truth was always about telling the story in a way that made people like a product, like a brand, more than they would have liked it if we hadn't told the story. Because in a commodity-driven world, which is what we live in today, where all phones work and make phone calls, but one is perceived to be cool, and one is perceived to be bling, and one is perceived to be work-like. It's people who tell stories that basically give those accoutrements that make consumers then flock to stores or go online to buy them. We think that all retail brands, whatever they are, have to stand for something identifiable, something above and beyond whether the primary service is physical or digital. In essence, when we created Fearless Girl for State Street, Fearless Girl was all about finding a meaningful role that drove and organized everything that State Street with their She Fund was trying to do. And I suspect everybody here is aware of Fearless Girl from the perspective of what it meant about women, what it meant about women's opportunities. It became the most talked about campaign in the world, and that little statue is now traveling around the world. It's in Europe today. It's on its way to Asia. We're hoping to get it to Latin America. But at the end of the day, it was figuring out the meaningful role for State Street's She Fund, a fund that invested in companies more likely to have women at senior positions, both on the board and in managerial roles. A way of basically making brokers know about their fund. It was a statue. So when you think about commerce, we don't care what it is. We think it's all about telling a story. It tells a consumer, if you do it right, what a meaningful role is, exactly why they come to the seller and what they can expect. Let me give you a sense about one particular product as an example of that. Some of you may know Aldi, small chain here in the United States, very big in the United Kingdom. A discount sales operation. Founded by a family in Germany, the brothers had a basic belief that they could basically sell access to fresh, healthy, good quality food, and they always said it should be a right, not a privilege. Now, they were really just discounters in many ways, but they had a belief that discount didn't have to mean just lower price. It could mean quality, it could mean value. And so let me show you how we developed that story and why they've been the fastest growing discounter and one of the fastest growing supermarkets in the UK.
I buy this tea for my husband. He likes tea. He also likes this one. I don't like tea. I like gin.
UK consumers understand from this what it means to go in, that products can have value. And to explain how we came up with those ideas, since as I told you, I threw out my speech, the person who really understands why these ideas have come to fruition is Suzanne Powers, who I'm going to turn this over to, and then I'm going to come back a little bit after she speaks.
Okay, see, over to me. Hello, everybody. It's that afternoon moment, isn't it? You caffeinated, though? You had some ice cream, I think? Some treats? Okay. I'm going to take you through a whole bunch of stuff, so hold on to your hats. I want to just spend a moment and explain how we know the things that we know, because as Harris said, our entire job is to help the brands we work on, whether it's Coca-Cola, whether it's Nestle, whether it's GM, find a meaningful role that they can play in people's lives. And one of the ways that we understand how to do that is we actually have a treasure trove of research. So I'm the nerd of the organization. I'm going to take you through some of that. Before I do, I want to explain our approach to that. We have a group called Truth Central. Truth Central hunts for those macro-level truths that impact any brand we work on, because they start with the human being. And they look for what drives humans today. What are their attitudes? What are their beliefs? What's their behaviors? What are the things that actually make them make different decisions about brands they're buying, products they're using, services, stores they're going to? And this can be anything from, we do big pieces around truth about beauty. How is that changing? Truth about even ourselves, advertising. Truth about youth. Truth about age. And ageism, frankly, comes up in that study quite a bit. So this is a whole treasure trove of data for us. In fact, we're 7 years in, we got about 25 million data points. So it enables us to really investigate things in very different ways. We did a study, first time was 2013, second time was 2015. It was called Truth About Shopping. And we were really hunting for, again, those macro-level truths that help people understand shopping behavior. What are the attitudes? What do people believe? What drives them to a store? What happens when they're there? We just did it again in 2018. And the thing that's come out from this study now is it's not enough for us to talk about shopping. In fact, it's an entire ecosystem of commerce. And I think we've heard about that today. All the different levers of commerce that actually are impacted by people's decisions, but also impact your business if you're sitting here in this room and you're trying to decode that. But for us at the end of the day, regardless if it's shopping and that behavior or the world of commerce, it's all driven by the human being. And that's the lens that we put on every single thing that we do, so that we can decode that and unpack it for our clients and help them really navigate that stuff. So 2018's version of research, lots of markets, about 30,000 people, and this is the quantitative side of the research. The other thing that we did as an organization is we believed in this area so much that we unleashed our entire employee population. So that's about 100 countries, believe it or not, that we put people on the streets. Even Harris did some interviews, by the way. We had to pull him off the street because he kept talking to him. But we did a ton of interviews all over the world, and we just all did what we call truth hunting. We went to bodegas, we went to big boxes, we went to malls, and we even went into people's homes and really understood what it is that they're doing, how they're shopping, why are they buying what they're buying, and their attitudes around that. And that's been an incredibly powerful qualitative layer to the research I'm going to show you. So when I have some data, some of it might be verbatim, some of it might be quantitative in nature. But before I jump into it, this is audience participation time, because you don't just get to sit there and take it in. We're going to do a quick quiz, all right? By a show of hands, I just gave you the answer. Hopefully you didn't see it. By a show of hands, you can't cheat. In what country are people most likely to say they consider themselves to be a shopaholic? US, raise your hand, even though you saw the answer. Brazil, India, yeah, winners, China. Okay, so it is India, which is very interesting. We're going to unpack that a little bit. Next quiz. Now you can't cheat on this one. Thinking about what the world will be like 10 years from now, which below are people most likely to say won't exist in most places? Show of hands for plastic bags. Show of hands for malls in this audience. Show of hands for cashiers. And show of hands for internet cafes. Pretty equal with the exception of internet cafes. So that's kind of interesting. The answer is plastic bags, which just again goes to show the apocalypse is probably not an apocalypse. It's actually more of a shakeout and an evolution, and we have to figure out exactly what that means. The bottom line from all of our research, and again, I'll show you a little bit more behind the scenes around this, is the fundamentals still exist. And no matter what market we're in, globally, consumers tell us over and over again that they still want these things that we have all known to be true since the beginning of time. They want the joy of discovery. They want the pleasure of great customer service. They want the satisfaction of convenience, the things that are evergreen within this area of retail. It's the way they experience them that is different. And that's what we're going to go into as we go through the various chapters. There are so many truths I could bring to you today. We brought five kind of areas of investigation that I think will be interesting to you as a group. We're going to talk about the emotional landscape of shopping. We're going to talk about privacy, because privacy has a big, big impact on how people behave and what they do. We're going to talk about a new ecosystem of influence. We're going to talk about shopkeepers in a little bit of a different way. And then finally, we're going to talk about, as Harris mentioned, creating those really meaningful retail relationships. Not just experiences, but relationships on a deeper level. All right, let's dive into the emotional landscape of shopping. Or, as I sometimes like to call it, has shopping gotten sad? And this is a very interesting piece that the researchers came back with that I thought was fascinating. I said, what do you mean has shopping gotten sad? And I'm going to show you what we mean by that, but let's go back. Shopping is a fundamental human truth. It's a human act since the beginning of time, right? In fact, if you look all over the world, and we're always hunting for these evergreen truths that are true in every market, every child grows up playing shopkeeper. And that is how they figure out how to have relationships with other humans, what the system is that we all live in, whether that's a barter system or whether that's a trade-off. But everybody has done this for generations and generations. That's not going away. And in fact, what we see is 6 in 10 people say that companies that focus on people are the future of shopping. So that's pretty good news. We still have humans at the core of this thing. So the truth that we would say from this area of the emotional landscape of shopping is that shopping can still bring that tremendous joy, and I know we've touched on that a little bit today, but it's just brought to life on completely new terms. Because suddenly it can feel a lot more functional. Look at the different ways that we procure goods, and I'm using those words very specifically because that's quite We also have this information that came true, a little bit higher with our younger generation. 1 in 2 people globally say if they could use a subscription service to buy everything, they would. So that gets to that functionality. And it's also become a lot more integrated. In 2013, when we did the research, we would hear people use language like, you know what, shopping, I'm going shopping. It's an intentional thing I'm about to do. 2015, we heard this, actually, I'm always shopping, because we started to see some integration between, again, offline and online experiences. 2018, it's, ooh, did I just buy something? Which is very interesting, right? And a little bit of that is driven by voice, and people actually not quite realizing what they've done in many cases. So that tells us a lot. And to answer the question, did shopping get sad? It can be a bit of a lonely endeavor, right? 57% of people believe it's too impersonal. 53% think that it used to be more fun. 46% said that online shopping is a lonely experience. So again, when the researchers came back and said, is it a sad thing? You know, I'm the optimist. In fact, my nickname at work is Susie Sunshine. And I said to them, but the other half of the population doesn't believe this. And that's an important piece for us to unpack and understand. However, technology and the effects of it are being felt. This is a global understanding of this loneliness piece that I'm bringing up, right? And you can see a continuum there. You know, if you look to the far end with Russia, you know, 15% feel that online shopping is too much of a lonely experience. That's not too horrible. Whereas they're fine with that, in other words. India, it's very social. They want it to be a social experience. So this is showing us what we're learning. And if I look at the verbatims from the research, it goes a little deeper. One person said, I feel like it's too easy. It has taken the joy out of acquiring something. The harder it is to find something, the more enjoyable it is to get. So that hunt that we've always known to be true and to be incredibly powerful versus my dream shopping app is an app that knows me better than I know myself. So two sides of the coin. Every trend has a counter trend, and we can see why the data is half and half because of this. So what we really need to decode when it comes to all of this, and how do we protect that joy of shopping, because it's still a human need and a human truth, is to find the perfect balance between human and machine. And my favorite part is to distinguish between shopping and buying. The Gensler folks did a great job of talking about different modes. And in fact, this is a whole conversation about those different modes. When we talk about the balance of human and machine, if we look to what's happening, when technology makes something easier, frictionless, seamless, time-saving, again, back to that truth of driving convenience, like McDonald's has done by putting in a kiosk for ordering, versus when we add a little bit and complement that human experience with a little bit of technology to make it a little better. You still get both. And I think as we search for those things, that's going to be a big piece of the puzzle. More importantly, though, it's about those different modes, shopping versus buying. The research shows, you know, shopping is still the fun bit. Discovery, stuff I didn't know was out there. It's still fun. We see all over the world, we have people send us in pictures, right? They always send, they're out with their groups of friends, it's a social event. These are still truths that we see, but that's what they consider, and the language they use, semiotically speaking, is shopping. But when they talk about the other stuff, they call it buying. And buying is kind of the necessary bit, right? The chores, I need more toilet tissue, I need my pet food in many cases, but all the other stuff outside of that is still fun. So we have to find a way to do both. And we have to optimize the experience knowing what mode somebody is in, right? So Amazon, in terms of shopping, there are probably parts of Amazon that are shopping, but more so we see it as a buying behavior. When we look at something like a flying tiger, which is a really interesting retail environment if you've ever been there. A lot of similar stuff that you'd find on Amazon, if not all the same stuff. But the way that store is created, which frankly is a bit chaotic for me, but I like it, is about discovery. Discovering some funny little trinket that you never knew you would have. So how we optimize the experience, given the modes people are in, is critical, a critical piece to this puzzle. One thing we'd kind of like to throw out there, and I know it's probably a bit controversial, is as we blend and merge human and machine, as we blend and merge these different modes and understand them a little bit more deeply, do we have a couple sleeping giants of retail discovery? Pinterest is where you go and explore and discover. Snapchat is actually the same. It's quite voyeuristic in a way. When these two add purchase to it, as they are doing, will we be unlocking some of that magical merging of human and machine, which could be very interesting for us to look at. IKEA is already playing around with stuff, right? So being able to envisage this chair in your living room uses technology to get you to a human experience that you would then have with your family. These are very important pieces, and there's a lot of play involved to experiment and feel what's right, given the brand that you're sitting on. So the implication from this first piece is, we would say, is that you need an array of experiences. We're not saying it's one or the other. It's how you actually calibrate that, right? Depending on what mode your people are in. Individuals can be in different modes at all times of the day as well, depending on what they're trying to look for. And so these are the pieces that we're constantly trying to help our clients navigate. I'll give you an example of what I mean by that. The Nike flagship store is a very interesting experience. If you haven't been there, it's quite stimulating. But the most important thing about the store is not really just the store. It's about the options that you have to interact with this store. You can do everything online and simply walk in and pick it up, or you can spend hours there, play with all of the apparel, play with the different shoes, do anything that you want to do. So these two ends of the spectrum, they've navigated both. And that's a very interesting approach that we're seeing more and more of as we blend human and machine and the different modes that people are in. Second piece, privacy, privacy, privacy. This is a pretty provocative topic, as you can imagine. We're in our 6th year of measuring privacy, and it's a hot topic, and it's a different topic globally. And what we find is different regulatory environments obviously create different relationships when it comes to privacy. So I'm going to bring some insight from a different part of the world, from China, where 90% of Chinese people feel positive about voice-activated shopping. In the US, it's just over half. This is all due to comfort with giving of your own data and to a less regulated privacy environment. So the truth within this area is about data and how we use it to unlock deeper relationships, but it has to be handled with care, right? There has to be a conscience as we look through that. And you can see the variance if you look at what would be said in China. If the Chinese are able to trade privacy for convenience, safety, and efficiency, they're willing to do it, and I'm going to show you an example of that. Versus what we see here about being a human right. And there's an entire continuum and spectrum of attitudes towards privacy. And truly understanding that is a big piece. I'm going to bring a little bit of China into the room, and you'll see what we mean by this particular quote with this next piece.
Imagine you're sitting at home and one day you notice your corgi is dirty. You open WeChat, hit a few buttons, and a few hours later a man shows up at your door with some shampoo and a big vacuum. Your dog gets cleaned and he looks great. You take a photo, you share it with your friends, and tag the dog cleaning business. You haven't left the app. Your friend who likes Hello Kitty and works a boring office job is slacking off at work and looking at WeChat. She sees the photo of your clean corgi. She decides she wants her poodle clean. She clicks the tag on your photo and orders the same service. Within seconds, the man with the big vacuum is on his way to her house. She pays him, and he's happy because he got paid instantly on WeChat. She starts chatting with you to thank you. Neither of you have left the app. While chatting, she tells you about a new hip noodle joint. She says, you have to come. It's a schlep, but you accept. She orders food while still at her desk. You order a taxi. She pays for the food. On the way to her house, the man with the big vacuum invests the money he earned from both of you into a wealth management product that's probably a little too risky. Neither of you nor the man with the big vacuum have left the app. Both of you arrive and the app tells the kitchen you're there. Your WeChat profile photo pops up on the wall. It's an old photo from the year you had that weird part in your hair. Of course she makes a comment. Your food is served. You notice your meat is a bit overcooked, so you snap a photo and post a disparaging restaurant review. You're already on your phone, and you remember you still owe your friend money because she paid. You transfer her money. Neither of you, the man with the big vacuum, nor the restaurant, have left the app. At the restaurant, there are no menus, there are no waiters, there is no cashier. There is only WeChat.
So, wow. And if you haven't experienced that, it's incredibly profound, and it's a bit mind-blowing that you can't do a lot without this app. I was there recently. I wanted to take a spin class. I arrived. I did my whole class. And I said, well, how do I pay you for this? WeChat. Oh, okay. That's a little difficult for a Westerner. But we figured it out. And this is an important piece for everybody to really understand about that seamless merging of commerce, of behavior, of attitude, of reviews, if you look at how things are being posted, all in real time. And this is happening because, again, there's a less regulated environment, but also the Chinese people are feeling they're getting a lot back from this. And this is how they live their entire life as they go through. So you can see the consequence of this from a data standpoint. They're far more receptive to AI innovation because it's already been giving back to their lives, right? Americans, on the other hand, we have a segmentation study that goes very deep, if anybody would ever like this, about the privacy attitudes of American citizens. And we have everything from eager extroverts, or people who live their life online and they're very comfortable with that, all the way through the walled warriors, right? Walled warriors are worried about every little thing going out to the universe, and they're very cautious about it. But what we do see is when a key driver, again, think of the fundamentals, such as convenience or time saving happens, people are willing to give more of themselves. Parents, very interesting, young parents particularly. They are totally up for AI if it's going to help them do something a little bit faster and easier because they're so time pressed. So using those triggers is really important to figure out how we navigate this new frontier. The implication from this piece is that if you're sitting in a, if you're driving a store, if you're on a brand that's in a store, no matter what you are, you need an approach to privacy. And you need an approach to understanding this new value exchange. Let me tell you what I mean by value exchange. Are you going to behave in a transactional way? Give you a little bit, get a little bit less money. Or in an efficient way, give you a little bit more, the brand experience gets a little easier. In an even deeper way, are you driving for belonging, creating more of a community? Or in the deepest possible way, when it comes to giving of data and what you get in return, self-actualization. And that's having an ethical approach to that. So we would say this is a new value compensation that we all need to help figure out how to navigate. Number 3, the new ecosystem of influence. I'm saying influence versus influencers, which is very intentional, right? Because our global data shows us that 71% of people say it's really tough to know if influencers actually use the products that they endorse in real life. And that's coming very much under fire. I just used a pun from the Fire Festival fiasco, which has really created a real questioning of influencers. And that's a broader cultural landscape where influencers are really being questioned and fake news, fake information is being questioned. So what we would say the truth within the influencer ecosystem is that people are seeking truth to guide them in a world where truth seems harder and harder to come by. On average, and this is a global statistic, people need to review 5 sources in order to see that that's the truth. And that's an important piece. So think about your brands. Think about the ecosystem of your brands. Hopefully these 5 different places are saying the same thing, whether that's about quality, whether that's about products and services and what you deliver, right? And this has only increased. In the last 3 years, we've gone from 61 to 72%. That truth is the most important thing and the most important drivers as people are navigating what they're looking for. But the truth is, if we back out of this, let's not think about influencers as paid influencers. Let's understand that everybody's an influencer. And this is particularly true in our younger generations, right? 1 in 2 people think that social media is their own personal brand. 84% of people say that they're going to share some information and they're going to recommend something if their brand delivers on what they hope for, right? So we're all influencers because that has not gone away. You know, these 5 sources of truth, they don't have to be official sources of truth. They're things like reviews. And we know people are using these. 72%, frankly, say that they're using it before they make a purchase. And we know that that's ubiquitous across categories. In years past, we would see this in higher I'm looking for the word, but in categories where it was more expensive, like cars, of course. You're going to pour through reviews. Travel, you're going to pour through reviews, right? Because you're spending more money. Now we see it across all categories, regardless, okay? So the implication from this is there's an opportunity to drive affinity. Not just affinity, which is kind of like I like you, but advocacy, right? If we do what we say, and that sounds like a simple thing. When I say do what I say, it's, you know, you have a product and service you're selling. You have a brand you're putting to the universe. If what you put out there is not delivered in the experience, they will not trust you anymore, and everybody will know about it. So it seems like a basic truth, but we sometimes forget about those things, and the dissonance can be there. One brand example I want to show you that I think is really interesting, ASOS, which is a great clothing brand. And what they've done is, rather than having highly paid influencers that are big and famous, they have micro-influencers. And these are people who actually use the products, actually have a whole lifestyle where they use it, and they'll literally tag the items of clothing that they have on in that lifestyle that people then, in that micro segment, are attracted to. We think this is a great example of the right way to put some authenticity back into influence. We'd also call it a little bit less around selling, and again, that disingenuine sale, to driving enthusiasm. How do you get people so excited about your brand, product, or service that they are becoming the best mouthpiece for you, that they are so excited about it that in fact they become your fans? Glossier is a great example of that. They find their fans and they actually use them as ambassadors to push forward with their products. Number 4, the world of shopkeepers. Okay, this has changed quite dramatically. I'm sure I don't have to tell you guys in this room this, but 2 in 3 people globally run their own business or would like to in the future. Even higher for our 18 to 34-year-olds, 74%, almost 3/4, right, of that population wants to be that entrepreneur we talked about earlier today. So the truth when it comes to this is shoppers used to be outsiders and people that we pushed product to, we pushed service to them and hope they accept it. How can we actually understand that they're insiders? Because they think they can make something too. And technology has enabled anybody to actually be a shopkeeper. We have even a new sort of language around this for mompreneur. I can't even say these words. I could barely say entrepreneur, and now we have all sorts of new ways to talk about this, right? So anybody can be doing this, and it's fantastically interesting that in fact 78% of people globally say they like to make things with their own hands. We see this as a backlash from technology and the sterility that can come from that, of just getting back involved in being a craftsman or a craftswoman. We had the first generation of this, things you could put up on Etsy, or things that you could actually put up on eBay, and we have the second generation with Shopify, allowing anybody to create a storefront online, anybody. And it's an incredibly interesting time to be able to make what you want and create your own storefront for that. So the implication from this is the opportunity to see shoppers as a partner, right? How do you make them part of the creation process? How do you bring them in, or at least bring them in to help you make something better? I'm going to play you an example of what I mean by this, and it's for a very large client of ours, Microsoft. Terry, you mentioned in the beginning, that's one of our clients. And even though it's a large client, we're still able to add some of that craftsman-like quality to it. So let me show you what I mean by it.
Customization is optional.
It's always a premium.
It comes at a price.
Yeah.
The more people that buy my design, the more money I make.
I got more than half of what I paid for it.
I actually made over $1,000.
I figured a lot of people would be into Despicable Me and the Minions.
There are loads of boxing fans in the world.
I made a Trump controller before anyone else.
The controller I designed was a breast cancer awareness controller.
I wanted the red, white, and blue to represent for veterans.
Make something that was empowering.
Raise money for a homeless charity.
That's the purpose of it, right? You have the profit sharing.
Did Twitter a lot.
I did social media on YouTube.
really great example of partnering with basically your most avid fans, right? And having them be part of, frankly, a commercial problem that we were having. These controllers are expensive, and the tailor-made ones are almost twice as much. So having them be part of the solution was a big piece to this puzzle. My fifth and final piece that I want to talk to you about, and Harris talked about this a little bit, is creating meaningful retail relationships. Again, deeper than an experience, but part of it is a big piece. So this is a truth that is, it could be frightening, but I think we can do something with it, right? That 74% of people globally think that stores care more about their data than their experience. So how do we get over that? Because that's a potentially quite scary place to be. The truth that we think actually helps us get over that is creating meaningful brand experiences, regardless of if they're online or offline, by the way, means having a deep understanding of what really matters most to people. What do we mean by that? This is a great example. I am such a huge fan of this example. 90,000 square feet of an experience, by the way. This is the new restoration hardware called a gallery, not called a store. And guess what it really is? It's 90,000 square feet of a product demonstration. Because you go in, and you have your coffee, and you have your wine. They even have bubbly rosé, by the way. And you can sit on any piece of restoration hardware and hang out. I'm watching people spend hours at this place. This is a whole different way. They're not thinking about the things that we used to think about in terms of that square footage and how to use it, right? 73% of people would rather live a life filled with great experiences than beautiful possessions. So they've understood this. They've understood that it's not sales per square foot anymore. It's actually experience per square foot. And think about what that means. It doesn't mean that if you spent 3 hours at the gallery, you're not going to buy something. You're probably going to go home and buy something online, or maybe a bunch of stuff. Maybe I'm just a sucker. I fell for it. And that isn't just true in the upscale market. It's true in the everyday places that we go to. Chase Design has done a beautiful job of looking at things that could fall into that mode between, again, buying and shopping, and really thinking about, yes, if you're in the pharmacy, there are places that you're into buying, and then there are places where you're into shopping, which is the beauty aisle, right? Brighter lights, wider aisles, places to experiment with stuff, right? And just redesigning that experience so that it actually can be a little bit better. So the growing importance of experiences, it doesn't just have implications in the physical store. It actually has implications around how we think about loyalty. How many loyalty cards do you have in your wallet? How many times do you get asked to get a loyalty card? A lot. But think back to that statistic. If 74% of people feel that stores care more about their data than them as people, that's kind of a scary proposition. So how we take that and make it about loyalty in a very different way is very important. It can be more than a points program. North Face has done a great job. Their loyalty approach is about this community that they have created of North Face people, right? So whether it's festivals they create, whether it's an experiential lab where they're actually having people help create the products, that's what the loyalists at North Face get. So what we would say is loyalty is actually a philosophy, not a department. And the bottom line of all of this, and Harris mentioned it before, it's a system. For regular, old, I'm not saying you're not regular humans, but for the humans that we are trying to connect with, regular people, everything is connected. So the thing that happens on their cell phone, the thing that happens on the street, the way that the aisles are set up, the way that customer service works, it's all one thing to them. And if we really figure out what the role is that each brand should be playing in their life, that system can be organized and calibrated for maximum effect. And the reason that's important is my most favorite of all time global statistic. 81% of people believe that brands can make the world a better place, right? That's a huge responsibility on you guys who are sitting on these retail brands that people interact with on a weekly or daily or even monthly basis. What are you delivering to them so that they actually feel that consistency and that actually drives through their entire life? So I'll summarize by saying, you know, we do have this opportunity to move from a transactional kind of relationship to a much deeper, more meaningful relationship where we think about shopping as shopping. That was a binary definition, wasn't it? And now we're thinking about the modes, shopping versus buying versus just discovering. Where we're thinking about data, we used to use data as a way to target very specifically, right, to different segments. Now we're thinking about it as a way to add meaning. When we think about buying influencers, to building enthusiasm. When we go from selling to consumers to partnering with people and thinking about experience as a place to experience is everywhere and everything. And I think we've heard a lot about that today. But we're using these principles right here to help our clients really rethink what it is that they do, the entire marketing spectrum, and how they actually behave as brands. Because when we put the human in the front and we think about that discovery and that wonderful experience we can create, it's pretty awesome.
So, Suzanne was obviously, you could see why she's the star of our firm. And so, for the students in the room, we decided that we would end very simply with what we would call put away those myths that you heard, because so much of this morning was all about them. And myth number one, in with the new always means out with the old. TV wasn't the end of radio. Radio was not the end of print. Print was not the end of billboards or covered wagons that advertise. The reality is e-commerce isn't the end of brick and mortar. Second is new technology is predictable in their direction. That's not true. Online giants are opening physical stores. Alibaba just opened a store in Malaysia. Amazon has stores all over the United States that they're planning to open, some for Whole Foods, some with just Amazon. Legacy stores should be playing to their strengths, but don't think that everything is moving in one direction. That's the press writing stories about everything moving in one direction, and then they will write stories about how everybody was wrong when they used to say that. Myth number three, trends are unidirectional. Blending of online and offline into omnichannel is here to stay, and fiddigital, I can't pronounce it either. Fidgedital, I have a whole company that does this. They say it all the time right, and I never get it right, but fidgedital, both physical and digital, is here to stay. I come from Brooklyn, we didn't use words like this. And myth number four, the idea that the world's divided into shoppers who want e-commerce or in-store and never the twain shall meet, not true. The fundamentals are still the drivers. The channel source is secondary. It is the one thing we can tell you as people who are responsible for selling products and brands. Stores are important. E-commerce is important. They are both important. And if you look at the statistics, the best retail customer and the best customer is a customer who uses both channels. Their level of engagement is higher, and the amount of dollars they spend is higher. And it's a truth throughout the world. And finally, this myth that if only retailers get the physical plus digital right, that's all that's needed. No. Brand meaning is all about shorthand for shoppers to know for what you stand. And so for what you stand as I end, I will show you something that Terry did, because we all need to pay homage to Terry. And this shows how thoughtful he was and how ahead of the game he was. And it also says to, whoops, sorry. It also, I need to warn Tina. Tina, this is before you met Terry. And what you've done with him is amazing, as we will all see in a second. And so the most important thing that I would take away from this as you begin your careers in retail is this truth that was not changed and is about what Terry told people at Macy's when he was CEO.
Macy's Santa Claus sending customers to Gimbel's. Preposterous.
What?
Yet, we cannot quarrel with success. Telephone calls, telegrams, over 500 parents expressing their undying gratitude to Macy's. So as a result, I've decided to make this the new sales policy for the entire store. If we haven't got what a customer wants, we'll send him where he can get it. In this way, Macy's will be known as the store with a heart. The store that puts public service ahead of profits.
And this is an age test. How many knew that movie called Miracle on 34th Street? And for those of you who didn't, and a professor has not played that in your class, the most important thing to understand about retail is what I learned in that movie. It sums it all up. Thanks for the time, folks. We appreciate it.